to the full lengths of writing a novel. However, he did this in his first book called The Path to the Spider's Nest by Italo Calvino. Now, to begin, we will be talking about this first novel briefly. What's really interesting is if you flip to the beginning of the novel, in the preface, which was written later in Calvino's life, he wrote this in order to give an account of what his experience was during World War II and what this meant for him, and how he translated and transformed his experience into his first novel. Oftentimes, one's first work is not respected or held in high regard. However, in the case of Calvino, his work was a bestseller. His first novel, The Path to the Spider's Nest, which obviously is different in the in Italian. It's something like Il Radi is spider, and oh wait, no, it is The Path to the Spider's Nest. Well, in any case, what I wanted to share this morning is a passage from the introduction and the preface to this work. He says in it that this is from the preface. If I say that in those days we made literature out of our condition of poverty, I'm not really talking about some ideological program, but rather about something far more profound that was inside all of us. Nowadays, writing is a regularized profession, and the novel is a product with its own market, its own supply and demand, with its launch campaigns, its successes and bouts of routine. And Italian novels are now all of good average quality and form part of the surplus goods of a society which is all too easily satisfied. This makes it difficult to keep in mind the spirit which animated our attempts to establish a new tradition of fiction which had to be built entirely from scratch. He goes on to talk about this new tradition of fiction, and here he's reflecting on the Italian novel and its place in the world. But he reflects on this first novel that it was a kind of undertaking. It was for him. Here's the passage. That is, the writer after writing finds that he is the poorest of men. This is then the poorest of men. This is then how I look back at that period which seemed at the time to be burgeoning with images and meanings. The partisan war, the months which had counted for years in my life, and from which one ought to be able indefinitely to conjure up faces and messages and landscapes and thoughts and episodes and words and emotions, but everything is distant and misty, while the pages stand there in their impudent permanence which I know to be deceptive, pages which even there were at variance with a memory which was still a living presence, something solid, apparently stable and permanent in experience. And those pages are no use to me. I really would need all the other things, everything in fact that is not written down in those pages. A completed book will never compensate me for what I destroyed in writing it, namely that experience which if preserved throughout the years of my life might have helped to compose my last book, and which in fact was sufficient only to write the first. So you see, Calvino came to later regret having even written this book, having published it, that is, even though Gore Vidal would write in the New York Review of Books that Calvino continues to look for the place where the spiders make their nests. Calvino has not only found that special place, but learned how himself to make fantastic webs of prose to which all things adhere. So Vidal is much enamored of Mr. Calvino and his writing, obviously. But it is quite interesting. I would like to read you a passage from The Path to the Spider's Nest. This comes from the very beginning of it, and you will soon see the metaphors therein. I should say that the main character is a boy who is in search of himself. Therefore, this book is something of coming-of-age novel or Bildungsroman. And Pin is indeed short for Pinocchio, and that tells you a whole lot about what kind of stage this young boy is at. So Pin decides that he will keep the pistol himself and not give it to anyone or tell anyone that he has it. He'll just hint that he possesses a terrible power and everyone will obey him. Whoever owns a real pistol must be able to play wonderful games, games which no other boy has ever played. But Pin is a boy who does not know how to play games and cannot take part in the games either of children or grown-ups. So he will go off now, away from everyone, and play with his pistol all on his own, games that no one else knows and no one else can ever learn. It is dark now. Pin turns out of the huddle of old houses into paths running between vegetable patches and rubbish pits. Perhaps one day Pin will find a friend, a real friend, who understands him and whom he can understand, and then to him and only to him will he show the place where the spiders have their lairs. It's on a stony little path which winds down to the torrent between earthy grassy slopes. There in the grass the spiders make their nests in tunnels lined with dry grass. But the wonderful thing is that the nests have tiny doors, also made of dried grass, tiny round doors which can open and shut. When Pin has played some particularly cruel joke and has laughed so much that a heavy sadness has finally filled his chest, he wanders all alone, along the paths by the torrent, looking for the place where the spiders make their nests. With a long stick he can probe right into the nests and skewer the spider, a small black spider with little gray markings on it like those on the summer dresses of old village women. It amuses Pin to break the doors of the nests down and skewer the spiders on sticks, and to catch grasshoppers and gaze close into their absurd green horse-like faces, then cut them up into pieces, and make strange designs with their legs on a smooth stone. Pin is cruel to animals. To him they are as monstrous and incomprehensible as grown-ups. It must be horrible to be an insect, to be green and to shit in little drops, and always to be frightened that a human being like him might come along with a huge face full of ginger and brown freckles, and fingers that can pull grasshoppers to bits. Pin is now all alone among the spiders' nests, and around him is night, infinite as the chorus of the frogs. He is alone, but he has the pistol with him. Now he puts on the belt with its holster to dangle over his bottom, like the German. Only the German was so fat the belt was large enough to be worn round Pin's neck like the bandoliers worn by warriors in the films. Now he can pull the pistol out with a grand gesture as if he were drawing a sword and shout, "Forward, men!" as boys do when they play at pirates. But he cannot understand what pleasure those silly fools get insane in doing that. Pin, after jumping around on the grass for a time, waving the pistol and aiming it at the shadows of olive trees, is already bored and does not know what to do with the gun next. At that moment, the spiders underground are gnawing away at worms or coupling together, males and females giving out little threads of slime. They're as filthy as men are, Pin thinks. And he pushes the barrel of the pistol into the opening of a nest, longing to kill them. What would happen if a shot went off? The houses are some way off, and no one would realize where it came from. Pin now has his finger on the trigger with the pistol pointed into a spider's nest, It is difficult to resist the longing to press the trigger, but the safety catch must be on, and he does not know how to cope with it. Then a shot goes off, so suddenly that Pin does not even realize he has fired it. The pistol jumps back in his hand, smoking and dirty all over with earth. The tunnel of the nest has collapsed. Onto it has fallen a little slant side of earth, and the grass is singed. At first Pin is terrified and delighted. How lovely it was! How good the powder smells! But then he is terrified again to find the frogs have suddenly all gone silent, and not a sound is to be heard, as if that shot had killed off the entire world. Then, very far away, a frog begins to croak again, and another nearer by, and others nearer still, till the chorus starts up again, and the croaking seems to Pin louder, much louder than before. From the houses a dog barks, and a woman calls from a window. Pin thinks he won't fire again, for that silence and then those sounds have frightened him. But he'll come back another night, and nothing will frighten him then. He'll fire every round in the pistol, even at the bats and the cats prowling round the chicken coops. Now he must find a place to hide the pistol. In the trunk of an olive tree, or burying it would be better, or better still, scoop out a hole in the grassy bank where the spiders' nests are and cover it over with mold and grass. Pin begins scooping away with his hands at a part where the earth is already honeycombed with tunnels made by the spiders, takes the pistol off its belt and puts it into the holster, and covers it all over with mold and grass and bits from the walls of chewed grass made by the spiders. Then he places some stones so that he can recognize the spot, and runs off lashing out at the bushes with the gun belt. His way home takes him back along the little man-made channels running above the torrent bed with narrow lines of stones to walk on. As he goes along, Pin is dangling the end of the belt in the water and whistling so as not to hear the chorus of frogs, which seems to be getting louder every moment. So, this is a very interesting passage, and I would like to share one more passage from the end of the book. What chapter is this? Chapter 12. It is the end. Outside it is already night. The alley is deserted like when he came. The shutters of the shops are up. There are shrapnel shelters against the walls made of planks and sandbags. Pin takes the path to the riverbed. He feels as if he were back at that night when he stole the pistol. Now he has his pistol, but everything is just as it was. He is alone in all the world and lonelier than ever, and Pin's heart is overflowing with a single question as it was that night. What shall I do? He walks along the irrigation channels weeping. First he cries silently, then breaks out into loud sobs. There is no one to come towards him now, as there was before. No one. A big shadow of a man is falling on a turn of the channel. Cousin? Pin! These are enchanted places, where magical things always happen. The pistol is enchanted too, like a magic wand, and Cousin is also like a great magician with his Tommy gun and his woolen cap as he pats Pin's head and asks, "Well, Pin, what are you doing here?" "I came to fetch my pistol. Look, a German naval pistol." Cousin looks at it closely. Lovely. A P-38. Look after it carefully. "And you, what are you doing here, Cousin?" Cousin sighs with that eternally regretful air of his, as if he were always undergoing some punishment. "I'm going to pay a visit," he says. "These places are mine down here, magic places. Spiders make their nests here." "Do spiders make nests, Pin?" "This is the only place in the whole world where they do," explains Pin, "and I'm the only person who knows it. Then that fascist Pell came and mucked everything up. Would you like me to show you?" "Yes, show me, Pin. Spiders' nests, just fancy." Pin takes him by his big hand, soft and warm as bread. "There, you see. There were lots of doors into their little tunnels. That fascist swine broke them all up. Here is a complete one still. Do you see?" They walk off into the country with Pin holding Cousin's big, soft, calming hand, a hand as comforting as bread. The darkness is punctured with tiny spots of light. Numberless fireflies are flickering over the hedges. "Filthy creatures, women, Cousin," says Pin. "All of them," agrees Cousin, "but they weren't always. Now my mother—" "Can you remember your mother then?" asks Pin. "Yes, she died when I was 15, says Cousin. "Was she nice?" "Yes," says Cousin, "she was nice." "Mine was nice too," says Pin. "What a lot of fireflies," says Cousin. "If you look at them really closely, the fireflies," says Pin, "they're filthy creatures too, all reddish in color." "Yes," says Cousin, "but seen from this distance they're beautiful." And they walk on, the big man and the child, into the night, amid the fireflies, holding each other by the hand. And so, you see, in this book, The Path to the Spider's Nest, we have sort of a man-child being guided by a father figure, and it's dubious as to Pin's sexuality is rather dubious. But he is coming of age, and he has found a real friend and cousin. And this work of literature is left up to interpretation. But you can see how much of a boy Pin is, really, even still at the end. And he's still questioning. And this is Calvino's book, The Path to the Spider's Nest, of his boyhood and all that it portends. Thank you very much, and we will be continuing next time with the next novel by Italo Calvino. Thank you.